Hello, Husker Nation, and welcome to episode 27 of College Football Throwdown. I'm your co-host, Alex Schmitz, and today I'm joined by my dad, Peter Schmitz.
Good evening, Husker fans and fellow podcast listeners.
That's right. This is a College Football Throwdown. For those of you who don't know, this is a college football podcast by college football fans for college football fans. And we're here today to talk about our collective team, the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and their game against Rutgers that was played this past weekend. But before we get into that, we're going to kick this off with our tradition of cracking a cold beverage for the podcast.
Oh, yes. Okay, here we go. All right. I got a nice cold one here on a nice Sunday evening with unusually warm weather here in the northern regions of Michigan in the upper portion of the lower peninsula.
Yep.
Cheers to you.
Yeah. We actually had some great weather yesterday in Los Angeles, although they got a little colder, but it was good stuff. Alrighty then. So, we're talking about the Rutgers game this week, and we gave our predictions last week in terms of what we thought the game was going to turn out. And we seem to be reaffirming on this podcast, you and I, about why we're not on the Vegas teams, coming up with the spreads and stuff.
Yes.
Yes, because you predicted a 35-21 victory, whereas I predicted a 42-35 victory, thinking that their star receiver was going to cause some major trouble for us on defense. But it turned out to be a lower scoring game than either of us thought, 31-14 as the final score.
Yep. Yeah. And the whole, expecting them to be more explosive, I think, can be explained by the fact that their, prodigious wide receiver really, although he played, was not himself. I mean, it was very clear that his leg or his ankle problem, the high ankle sprain that he apparently has, was still very much limiting his ability to create separation and to be able to make cuts. He was not himself.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because once again, I don't know what it is. I keep scheduling things for Saturdays. Like my Sundays tend to be less busy, but my Saturdays have been busy quite a lot because I wasn't able to watch this game while it was airing, but I was paying attention to the play-by-play on my phone and sort of following the game that way, and then got to sort of catch up on it after the fact, whereas you got to watch it live there in Michigan.
Yep, and I'm thrilled, Alex, that you're enjoying your new surroundings there in the Los Angeles area, and you're doing various activities, but at some point you do need to set your priorities here, pal, and get yourself in front of a television set for football Saturdays. As you know, there's 2 left.
Yes.
And then the season is effectively over, and now it's just postseason.
It's true. Well, I hope to be able to do that. If not this week, maybe this weekend, we'll have to see. But the weekend after for sure, since that's our Iowa game, and there's a lot of big games coming there in that last week.
Your high school alma mater, I will have you know, won again this week and is now in the semifinals of the state playoffs and plays this next Saturday at either 1 or 3 p.m. They're still figuring out the schedules. Depends on what happens with, ironically, the high school, your high school's volleyball team is also doing very well and is in the semifinals of volleyball as well. And so depending on whether they win or lose on Tuesday will determine what the time of the playoff game is on Saturday, because the finals for volleyball are this weekend.
Interesting. Isn't the semifinals, at least when I was going, were traditionally always played in the Uper Dome. Did they do away with that, or are they still doing that?
No, they still sometimes do it, but we had earned so many points within the Michigan system that we got the home game rather than whoever the team was from the Upper Peninsula. In this case, they got beat anyway, so it didn't matter. earlier in the playoffs. So, so bottom line is that is the reason for our complexity.
All right. Well, glad to hear that the St. Francis Gladiators are doing well.
They are.
We actually got a comment on one of our last Nebraska episode where we talked about the Michigan State game. Steven left us a comment saying the worm has turned! Exclamation point.
Yes, and Steve has been a good loyal listener of ours, so we need to find a way to see if we can connect with him and get him on the podcast here. We'll have to contact him and find out what his schedule is and see if we can get him on. But I kind of think that the worm has turned for a couple of reasons, Alex, and it's probably worth mentioning right now as a result of your comment there. It's clear that after our struggles there in that mid-season period where we lost to Purdue and lost to Northwestern and some others, I think the coaching staff has kind of gotten together and recognized that just maybe some of the clamors that were going on throughout the Husker fandom, group were in fact had some valid points. Because I have seen a clear, conscious commitment on the part of the football team to stay committed to the running game to a greater extent than they did earlier in the season. And not necessarily because statistically they're running the ball better or having better, on a per carry basis average, but because they've simply made a commitment to do it more. And as a result, we're winning football games. Yeah. And I don't think that those two things are just coincidence.
Oh yeah, well, and we made the point that even in the earlier games in the season, if you looked at our rushing yards, we were getting between 3 to 4 yards per carry on average. So we were still being reasonably successful with it in a lot of those early games, and that's what was so befuddling that we weren't going to it or trying more complex runs than just a quarterback sneak or handing off to the running back to have him go down the gut.
Right, exactly. And now we're seeing a little bit more creativity, and we're also seeing a greater commitment where we'll do it even if we're not having profound success, and as a result, it's actually enhancing the effectiveness of our passing game, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we also did some interesting things in the passing game. I know we had Ethan Carter caught a few big balls and he's our tight end, which I was reading that that's the first time we've thrown to a tight end in 4 years or something to that effect.
Well, not thrown to it. No. What was actually the thing that was unique was we did a tight end around, kind of reverse with a tight end. Which is the first time we've done that in 4 years.
Okay.
And it worked for about a 30-yard touchdown, and it was a great play. He had a convoy of blockers in front of him. It was very well executed, and Sethan was able to run it right in. So you hope to see more of that sort of thing. A little bit of creativity of finding different ways to get your athletes the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we were discussing before the podcast that one of the big reasons why our defense seemed to be playing so much better in this game than they have in certain previous ones probably has something to do with the fact that we're more healthy now than we have been almost all season.
That's correct. Finally, we're getting some guys back, from injury recovery, and ironically, it's right in time for our bye week. But the reality is that it's going to enhance our ability to and our confidence to do a lot of different things and rotate more players, because now those guys that had to stub in while these guys were out are players that our coaching staff now has confidence in. So now all of a sudden we have more capability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of a blessing in disguise there. And I actually think this time's out pretty good in terms of those guys getting back, because now they're getting back healthy. We have this victory here and against Rutgers, and now we have a full. We can take advantage of that bye week to its fullest extent. Get our best guys in practice, repping over and over again, and focusing solely on that Iowa game. I feel like that'll help us put our best foot forward for that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have no excuses. We have no pressure. All the pressure is going to be on Iowa, and no pressure about who's supposed to win, but yet we know we have the ability and the capability to go out there and win the football game against Iowa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Who did they play? They played against Minnesota this week, right? And it was like
Correct.
28-14 or something like that.
No, 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 no. It was actually quite a bit higher scoring. I believe it was like 41-35 or something along those lines was the final score.
Yeah.
So it was about a 5 or 6 point victory for them. But it was a back and forth kind of deal, mostly with Iowa in the lead, but with Minnesota constantly coming back time and time again, and they couldn't quite stop them out. So there's definitely some optimism that we should be able to move the football against that Iowa defense, but that Iowa offense is very good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was 35-40. I just looked it up. You were
35-40. Yep.
Yep. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I remember I texted you because I was looking at the play-by-play, and like the first drive we had it, we like ran it like, several times in a row and just pounded it down there for a nice drive for our first touchdown. And so that was a nice change to see from some of our earlier games.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot to like about what we did in our game against Rutgers. I mean, we went into the Rutgers game knowing we had some things we felt we could do, and the coaches even talked about it. They felt pretty good about certain aspects of what we were going to be able to do, but they were very concerned about Rutgers offensively and what Rutgers offense was going to be able to produce. And then Rutgers special teams was also an area of great concern, and we were able to very much clearly win the special teams game. And then frankly, if it wasn't for a couple of mistakes that we made, specifically our quarterback made during the game, they weren't able to get hardly anything going offensively until we gave them life with some extra possessions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, looking at the stats here, we had we passed it 21 times for 188 yards, and we rushed it 38 times for 174 yards. So quite the the balance was definitely in favor of running this week, which was nice to see. And then another big factor is that we only had 2 penalties for 15 yards, which is a big change from having 8 or 9, in a lot of our games earlier in the year.
Absolutely, and that's again going to become huge. And as we look forward to next game, Iowa is probably one of the least penalized teams in the country, and those are two things that are going to be huge in the outcome of the game, is penalties and then turnovers. Iowa is outstanding at both, and we are not good at both.
Yeah, no, I mean, because that was, as you said, as I was watching the play-by-play, like we were up 21-0, and I was feeling pretty good, and then I saw them, I looked again like an hour later, and all of a sudden it was 21-14, and I saw we'd thrown 3 interceptions, and I was like, oh gosh, are we gonna let them back into the game? And obviously we took control after that point, but the fact of the matter remains that we could have totally dominated that game if we didn't throw those interceptions. We gave them those points essentially.
Absolutely, and fundamentally that is one of I think the biggest questions now as we look not only to the Iowa game here, and we should talk a little bit about the implications of this upcoming game against Iowa, but not only about that game, but about going forward from here, whether it's we're able to have a bowl game or not. If we win and we're able to have a bowl game, then what's going to happen with the evolution of this offense and how Tommy goes about executing it. He has so many great attributes as an athlete and as a leader, as our quarterback, and he has great physical skill. But his decision making is at times awful, and so as a coaching staff, they're in a quandary. What do you do with this kid? And frankly, my question is, why are these coaches unable to get him to understand the mistakes he's making? And some of that is, you've got to allow your great players to kind of stretch the envelope a little bit. And he did that in this game, in which at times that were successful, and then at other times they weren't successful. And so where do you draw that line? And that's the tough part, that these coaches are having to figure out what that line is and how they're going to, coach Tommy going forward.
Yeah. Well, I've talked on a number of occasions in the past how I hate it. If it's let's say we have a run that gets a yard on first down, 2nd and 9, and then we throw a deep ball on 2nd down, going for a touchdown or something. We don't get it, and then it's 3rd and long. I hate it when we put ourselves in that sort of situations, and sometimes I wonder how much of that is the coaching, calling the plays like that, versus Tommy, who has, I think, shown a propensity for wanting to throw the deep ball because he does have the arm to do it. He has the strength. Mm-hmm. He's proven that, but his accuracy isn't there yet.
Right. Well, and his strength is premised on the fact that if he, has the proper footwork, he can be incredibly accurate. He's a great thrower, but he is atrocious with footwork. Just awful. And again, that gets back to coaching. What are those coaches doing when they're reviewing that film? It's very easy for them to show him, occurrence after occurrence after occurrence of him throwing the football with improper footwork. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't be that hard for them to be able to give him plenty of examples. This is what you're not supposed to do. Now, here's what we want you to do differently. And then during the practice, you need to stop practice and correct him during practice whenever he doesn't have his feet right.
Yeah.
You just do.
Well, I got to think, there's no conceivable way in my mind that they're not, telling him that I'm working with him on his footwork during practice. I almost wonder if it's a little bit like, with our previous quarterback, Taylor Martinez, we had an issue where he was a great runner, obviously, and he improved on his passing over time, but he made mistakes like Tommy does, throwing some interceptions and making some bad decisions, and then his throwing motion would sometimes be crystal clear and beautiful, but then he'd go back into these bad habits and he'd fling it without properly, getting his arm back and adjusting his feet, like you say. So I just wonder if it's kind of that, mental thing. It's he's so used to it, and so when he panics, he falls back on that instinct,
Yes. Well, I think that is certainly part of it. There's no question that it is that learned behavior. And so it's one of those things where you would think it wouldn't take that long for him to break that habit. And I have a feeling that, again, I'm a bit of a Bobby Knight school of coaching, so I'm not maybe up with the times, if you will, as to how maybe you're supposed to do it. But I would be literally, taking some tape and putting an X on the point on the field where Tommy used the proper foot technique. I would stop practice. I would make a big deal out of it, and I would say, Tommy, you rolled out, you readjusted your feet, and then you released the ball with the proper step and release right here. And I would put a tape on the grass field or on the AstroTurf, the field turf field, everywhere where he's doing that. And I would keep stopping practice every time until he got the message that we are not going to have an effective practice until you can get over this problem, because that's how important it is.
Mm-hmm. No, that would be interesting. We'll see. I'd be curious to see how good your coaching philosophy would work in that sort of scenario. But
it's an old Bobby Knight technique.
Yeah, but I think I'm frustrated. That we had those interceptions, that we let them stay in the game for longer than we should have. But overall, we made a lot of the adjustments we talked about on the podcast. Less penalties. Playing good defense. And then showing commitment to running the football. Like you said, letting that open up the passing game. I feel like I'm forgetting his name. The offensive coordinator is now starting to realize
Langsdorf.
that. Langsdorf, yeah. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It does seem like he's making some progress in terms of his comfort level and what he is comfortable with. And frankly, I think we had an injury to our starting running back, which allowed for them to make a change at running back, and they've gone with a bigger, more of a power back in Amani Cross, and that has helped them too.
Mm-hmm.
because all of a sudden our running game is a little more predictable. Because even when other things break down, Amani's a powerful enough runner that he still falls forward and gets a few positive yards, and it doesn't keep us falling behind on the chains. We're able to stay on time because of what he does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's not necessarily going to break out in the 80-yard run all the time, but he's consistent, that kind of thing. Yeah. All right, and now previewing the upcoming game, obviously we have a bye week. Next week, we might actually have a special guest for you guys. We're going to have to see if we can make that happen, so you might get a cool Nebraska treat on next week's podcast. But 2 weeks from now, we will most certainly be doing the podcast on the Iowa game, and in terms of what we have this bye week, we have this extra time, and I feel like with Iowa, I know that if they beat, do they play Purdue next week?
Yes.
Okay, if they beat Purdue, which they will almost certainly do, they will have secured their spot in the Big Ten championship game. Even if they lose to us, it wouldn't affect that, but obviously if they have playoff hopes, then that game does still matter to them, and the fact is that I bet you the media is going to be hyping up the fact that Nebraska upset MSU, so now can they repeat it with Iowa? So even though that might seem like a game where they might, be looking ahead to playing Ohio State or whoever in the title game, I feel like they're going to be very focused on beating Nebraska that day, and we're going to be very focused on beating them too, so both teams will be coming with something to play for, I think.
Oh, I agree. I don't expect anything but their best effort, but I will say that because we do have the bye week at this late juncture in the season, you'd like to think that might help us out a little bit, because we're gonna be able to take a few days off. The coaches are going to be able to focus on breaking down some Iowa film without any regard for any other team, because they know it's the end of the year, so they can really dive in and dissect things. And so I would expect, I'll be disappointed if we don't have a great game plan and that our guys aren't healthy and ready to go come next Friday. Not this coming, but the other one.
Right. Oh, is it a Friday game?
It's a Friday game.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's the Friday after Thanksgiving, the traditional Friday after Thanksgiving game that we've been playing pretty much going back to our series with Oklahoma.
Yep, good old
in the
tradition.
Big 8 days. Yes.
Yep. This is just a thought I had, but do you think that the coaches would get all the players together on Saturday when Iowa plays against Purdue and have everybody watch that game and just kind of be pointing out things about their formations or whatever?
No. They would not do that at that time during a live game. That's a very ineffective way to communicate those kinds of things, Alex. What they will do is they'll get the game tape from Iowa, and they will be able to break that down and be able to have those discussions. And I guarantee you they're already going to have cut-ups that they'll be reviewing this week of earlier Iowa games.
Oh yeah.
They'll find ways to get various sources of tape from Iowa, and be doing some of that already throughout the course of this week.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, like you were saying earlier, it seems like you're worried about Iowa's offense. That's their biggest threat.
I really am. I think defensively Iowa's sound. They're good. They don't have a weakness, but they will give up some points. They gave up 35 to Minnesota. They gave up a lot of points to some other teams. I think that we have a prolific enough offense that we should be able to move the football and make some hay and produce some points against their defense. But their offense is awfully efficient.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I guess it'll be interesting to see how our defense comes back. Like I said before, hopefully the fact that we are finally getting our defensive guys healthy and the fact that they'll get a lot of reps with this bye week in practice will mean we'll be prepared for that.
Exactly. It's interesting, Alex. We've now talked for about 20 minutes or so, and historically in our podcast, one of the first things we've done is reviewed the previous game, and we've hardly talked about that Rutgers game, other than to talk a
Well,
little bit about Tommy's performance.
oh, well,
The vast
we
majority,
talked about it. We
I
talked
know,
about it.
but you know what I mean, relatively speaking, and it's an indication of a kind of a shift in focus where now that when you begin to have and string some victories together, especially victories against teams that you expected that you should be able to beat, then it's not that once that's done, it's not as important as maybe it was when we beat Michigan State, for example, because it's like we were expecting to do that. Let's move on to that next thing. Let's focus on what we get to accomplish. After the Purdue debacle, the Coach Riley and his staff got the team together and said, okay, forget about what's happened in the past. It's all behind us. Let's buy in now. And those of you who don't want to buy in, leave. But those of you who are ready to buy in, let's do this thing. And we got a 3-game season. Let's go to work. And now at this point, we are 2-0 in the 3-game season, and we have a chance to go 3-0 and potentially beat a second top 10 team. That's a pretty cool thing to do.
Yeah, no, that it's hard to understate how much the Michigan State victory seems to have given this team life, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said about just making the point about the injuries, how much better our defense looked against this Rutgers team. We have to kind of look back and realize that Riley really was playing with a group of toys, as it were, that was not what he wanted, that was incomplete, from the very beginning, and that was part of the reason why things weren't gelling there at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, that's certainly part of it. It was also and the surprising part to me was that I feel like Langsdorf, our offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, has apparently needed time to adjust and figure out the basics of college football success that guys like Nick Saban fully understand, Mark D'Antonio, Jim Harbaugh, all these guys that are really successful. You look at them, and for the most part, those guys, what they all have in common? They have powerful running games that work. And when they don't have powerful running games that work, they're not as good. It's just that simple.
Mm-hmm. Nope, you're definitely right. Any more you want to say about the Iowa game in terms of what we need to do to prepare for them?
Well, I'm curious. Well, there's 2 things I can say. One, he's already kind of outlined. Mike Riley has already outlined what he's going to do. The team's going to practice a couple of times, just 2 times this week, and then they're not going to get back together really in earnest on the Iowa game until Sunday. Basically, they're going to shift everything forward a day, and they're going to treat it like a game week, and they're going to give it the regularly scheduled game week experience, but it's going to start a day early because we play on Friday, and so other than that, this week is going to be spent by the coaches recruiting, and probably breaking down some game film, maybe spending a little bit more time to deep dive into what's going on with Iowa over the course of the season and how can we attack them.
So you basically, it's kind of, this week is less of a intensive practicing session for the players as much as it is a kind of strategy meeting for the coaches to kind of get their bearings.
Yes, the hope with the kids is that you bring them in for their PT stuff, their physical therapy stuff, and all the injuries and stuff that they're helping. So you keep them, but otherwise you keep them out of that area, and you tell them get caught up on your schoolwork. Give yourself a little rest. Make sure you're sleeping at night. Those are the things that the coaches are telling these players. This is your opportunity to get yourself right so that you're ready to play at your peak performance the day after Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I can see that working for sure.
Yeah. So that's what they're going to try to do. And if we can get a Tommy, I wanted to mention one thing. It's interesting. I mean, this has become so consistent that they've actually, people I'm starting to see on the internet have a name for it. It's called Good Tommy and Bad Tommy. And literally there is almost 2 different versions of Tommy Armstrong. There's the good Tommy that understands the value that he brings to the team in terms of his legs, both running the football and making the decision to tuck and run it, as well as his decision making in terms of those choices. They seem to be really good. And then there's the bad Tommy, who tends to fling the ball without proper mechanical technique in his throwing motion, and then once he does it once, he tends to do it 2 or 3 times. He compounds mistakes rather than avoiding them by moving beyond them. And so that's an area that you still hope that Tommy can figure this out over the next few weeks and months, so that by the time we get into next football season, he's going to be a very different quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's shown clearly that when he's playing at his peak, what he's capable of, he's a terrific quarterback. But it's consistency, I feel like, with him. He needs to be able to cut down on those mistakes and be able to, make those good plays more consistently, more often, or at least, throw the ball away if you're getting chased down on third down rather than trying to force something, and throw an interception. Make it a neutral play rather than a negative play.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so, if we can see some progress here in the next week to 10 days with Tommy, getting a chance to kind of step back, maybe watch a little film, get a sense of what he's been doing wrong, that sort of thing. I think, based on what Langsdorff has been able to do in terms of game preparation, not play calling, but game preparation, he's done a very good job. And so I would expect our team from center to tackle to tight end, all the way to quarterback, they're all going to be on the same page. They're going to know what they're expected to do. And now it's just a matter of can they go out and do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and hopefully Memorial Stadium is going to be rocking that day like it was with the MSU game. I'm sure fans are going to be excited for that one with it being senior day and all.
Absolutely. I think it'll be a great environment.
Yep. All right, so time to lay down some predictions here about what we think the score is going to be. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to predict a Nebraska victory. I'm going to presume that we rest up, we come playing some of our best football that we've played all season, and that we execute and that we run the ball and that our defense finds ways to slow down their offense enough that we stay in the game. And so I'm going to predict let's say a 35 to 30 victory for us.
35-30. Okay, pretty close.
Yeah.
Typical of the other games that we've had with them.
Yeah. I feel like best case scenario, is that we win the game, but it's a close game. I don't see a situation where we blow out Iowa. I don't think that's happening. Worst case scenario, we get blown out by Iowa. So I feel like if we win, it's going to be close. I mean, they're a top 10 football team for a reason, but we are capable of beating them.
I would agree. My only difference is I actually think that whoever ends up getting the upper hand, whether it's us or Iowa, but whoever gets that upper hand, they're going to be able to kind of drive it home, and ultimately we'll have quite a number of, plays. What do I want to say? Quite a number of plays available to them to be successful. And so I don't think it's going to be close. I think the ultimate score ends up one or the other quite comfortable, meaning I'm going to say 12 to 18 point differential. And it's a matter of, do we hold on to the football and, effectively control the kicking game and the change of possession on punts. If we do those things all well and we hold on to the football, I think we win the game, and I don't even think it's close. I think it would be let's say 42-28. But okay. I could see that score being a 42-28 Iowa victory just as easily. Mm-hmm. So I'm conflicted on that, and I'm going to go with a Nebraska victory only because I believe that we have this time off to prepare. I think we're building momentum, and I'm confident that Iowa has really not seen a lot of teams stem to stern, that have the kind of explosive scoring threats and athletes that we have on offense. So I'd like to think that we'll be able to move the football on them pretty effectively.
Right. I mean, their biggest wins are against Wisconsin and Northwestern.
Right. And those were a while ago. And the Wisconsin victory was a fairly close one. Now, the Northwestern was a very dominant victory during a 2 or 3 game stretch where Northwestern seemed to kind of lose their focus. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that was partially injuries, too.
Yeah, well, and we played, close against both those teams. Obviously, we lost both of them, but...
Oh, there's one other thing about Iowa.
Okay.
If they lose C.J. Beathard, who is their quarterback, they're in trouble. The guy behind him is a young gun. I believe he's a true freshman or a redshirt freshman, but he's a young kid. And I don't believe if we get in a situation where that's the guy because C.J. is hurt, I guarantee you we'll tee off on this fella.
Interesting. Has C.J. gotten a little banged up, like not out, but he's gotten hit in previous games? Do you think that's a worry for them?
I don't think it is. Nope.
Okay. Yeah, because that's honestly one reason I'm happy we have this bye week is because I know Tommy he didn't get injured, but he got hit pretty bad one time in this Purdue, or not Purdue game, but the Rutgers game. He's gotten beat up several times throughout the season, so it's good that he'll have the chance to rest up a bit. Nope. Hey, did I lose you?
No, not at all.
Okay. Alrighty then. And one other thing I just remembered, because I obviously didn't watch the game, but I was reading about this. Good job on our defense. I think we read that we had like 6 sacks and like 11 tackles for loss or something like that over the course of that game.
Yeah, it was our best defensive performance of the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so definitely good to see that. We haven't seen too many sacks this year, so I like hearing those numbers.
Me too, and with our health, we're able to rotate, so all of a sudden you can be more aggressive.
Mm-hmm. Precisely. Alrighty then. Well, as we said before, we may or may not have a Nebraska specific podcast next week. We're going to see if we can get this special guest to come on with us. But we will definitely be back 2 weeks from now, and we have we'll be doing our traditional more college overall podcast this week when the new playoff rankings come out. And we'll be looking forward to the Iowa game, which will decide if we're going to go bowling this year or not.
That's right. It's an unusual position for us to be in, but one that makes that game very exciting and really important for both teams. And given that it's one of our few trophy games, and it is kind of the intended rivalry that the Big Ten wanted to create when Nebraska joined the conference. It should lead us to all those things. I expect the Nebraska fan base to be energized, and I expect that environment on the day after Thanksgiving to be rocking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it will be funny if we can pull out the victory against Iowa. When you look back at the season, you'll see that we played terribly against teams who are in the bottom half of Division I football. But
right.
Then, when we played against top 10 tier opponents, we managed to win.
Right. Well, and see, regretfully, that's kind of Mike Riley's MO, even back to the Oregon State days. So it's a little scary.
Yeah. Well, obviously, we'll have to look forward to next year to see if that's going to be a trend or not. But I'd like to think that, the various factors about the coaching staff, not calling maybe the best plays, and the team maybe not being fully on board and all of our injuries and all of that were the true reasons that we struggled so much in those games. And then there's just the flukiness of some of those crazy finishes,
Right.
I like to think that that's the reason more than some sort of Mike Riley curse or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I would agree.
All right. So if you all out there enjoyed this podcast, you can email us at huskerpete13@gmail.com. You can find us on footballthrowdown.podomatic.com or on the Podomatic app. We're also on iTunes. You can subscribe to us there, give us ratings and reviews. You can comment on the Podomatic page like Steve did for us this week. We always love hearing from you guys. And thank you out there for listening, Husker Nation. And until next time, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.